Jordan, 28 years old, sat alone in the dimly lit living room of their apartment. The faint smell of dust filled the air, and the silence was only broken by the soft hum of the fridge. In front of them lay an old letter, its envelope worn and frayed at the edges. The handwriting was unmistakable. Their father's. It had been years since they'd heard from him, and even longer since they had thought about him. The weight of the letter in their hands was heavier than expected. As their fingers trembled, they slowly peeled back the envelope, heart racing. What could this possibly mean? Was this a sign of reconciliation? Or was this just another painful reminder of abandonment? They unfolded the letter cautiously, and as they began to read, the words inside shook their entire world. This wasn't a letter of apology. It was a revelation. Jordan's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the letter. The words on the paper blurred as her mind raced, trying to process the impossible truth. She had always wondered why her father left, but this letter revealed something deeper. The silence of the room weighed on her, and the familiar emptiness that had accompanied her father's absence for so long now seemed even more profound. What was the meaning behind this sudden reappearance in her life? What did he want her to know after all these years? As she read the letter again, Jordan realized she could no longer ignore the feelings it stirred in her. The path ahead was uncertain, but the question remained. Could she trust this letter, or was it just another piece of a puzzle that would never quite fit? The room felt suffocating, and Jordan found it hard to breathe as memories of her father flooded her mind. She had spent years wondering why he had left, why he hadn't fought to stay. But now, reading this letter, the puzzle pieces started to fall into place. She had never known the whole story, and now, this letter was forcing her to confront the painful truth of her past. The realization was overwhelming. She stood up abruptly, pacing the room as her thoughts swirled in confusion. Had she been living a lie all this time? Was this letter the key to understanding everything that had never made sense? The deep ache in her chest told her that she could no longer live in denial. It was time to face what had been hidden for so long. The minutes felt like hours as Jordan continued to wrestle with the letter. Her emotions were a mix of anger, confusion, and a strange sense of relief. She had always imagined that one day she would confront her father, but never like this. With trembling hands she reached for her phone, her heart racing as she dialed his number. The thought of hearing his voice after all these years was almost too much to bear. Was this a moment of closure, or would it lead to more unanswered questions? The line rang once, then twice, and Jordan's breath caught in her throat. The sound of the phone on the other end filled the silence, and she was forced to make a choice, to wait for him to pick up, or to hang up and leave the past untouched. The phone stopped ringing, and the voicemail kicked in. A sharp pain pierced Jordan's chest as she heard her father's voice, aged and distant, speaking those words she had longed to hear for years. "I don't know if you'll ever read this letter, but I want you to know that I've always thought of you." The message was simple, yet it carried a weight that was both a balm and a burden. Her hand shook as she ended the call, and a deep sadness washed over her. She was no closer to the answers she needed, but one thing was clear. Her father had never truly left her, and now she had to decide what to do with the truth he had shared. The path ahead was unclear, but Jordan knew that her journey was only just beginning. Jordan's feet echoed softly on the pavement as she walked down the quiet street. The evening air was cool, and the dim streetlights flickered overhead. It had been a long time since she felt so lost, yet so drawn to a path she couldn't see. The letter from her father had left a mark on her, but what did it truly mean? Could the answers she sought be in the hands of someone who had been absent for so long? Her emotions were tangled, anger, regret, longing, all pulling her in different directions. She had never expected to feel this way about a person who had left her. The ache inside was a reminder of the years spent wondering why he hadn't returned, and now, that unanswered question was the only thing that mattered. Jordan had to make a choice: let the past continue to haunt her, or step forward into the unknown with open eyes and an open heart. The following morning, Jordan found herself sitting at a small cafe, the sun streaming through the windows and casting a warm glow across the room. The weight of her thoughts was still heavy. But there was something different now. Hope, perhaps. She had decided to meet with Sarah, someone she had known for years, but never truly connected with. Sarah had always been the kind of person who seemed to understand life's deeper meanings, and Jordan had always wondered how. As she waited for Sarah to arrive, Jordan couldn't help but question what she was seeking from this meeting. Would Sarah have the answers to her father's disappearance, or was this just another step toward accepting the unknown? The question lingered in her mind, unanswered, as the cafe buzzed quietly around her. As Sarah walked into the cafe, Jordan's eyes met hers, and she immediately felt a sense of calm. Sarah, older at 55, had an aura of peace that Jordan could barely comprehend. She was everything Jordan wasn't: composed, wise, and effortlessly confident. Sarah smiled warmly and sat down across from her, her movements slow and deliberate. "You've been carrying a lot with you," Sarah said softly, her voice soothing. Jordan was taken aback by how easily Sarah seemed to read her. The words hung in the air for a moment, heavy with meaning. Sarah wasn't just talking about the letter or her father. She was speaking to a deeper pain that Jordan had buried long ago. "Sometimes, we hold on to things we don't need," Sarah added. Jordan swallowed, unsure how to respond. But something about Sarah's presence made her feel less alone, less confused. Maybe this was what she needed. Someone who understood without judgment, someone who could guide her. Sarah's gaze softened as she leaned forward, offering Jordan a gentle but direct look. "You don't have to carry the weight of your past alone," she said, her words like a balm to Jordan's weary soul. The room seemed to quiet around them as Sarah spoke. "Your father's choices may have hurt you, but they don't define you. You have the power to choose who you are regardless of what's happened." The truth of those words settled over Jordan like a warm blanket. Could it be true? Could she really change her path, despite the scars of the past? The doubt still lingered, but Jordan was starting to feel something shift inside her. Sarah wasn't offering easy answers, but instead, she was showing her a path, one she had to walk herself. "You have to start by accepting the truth," Sarah continued. "Only then will you find peace." Jordan sat back in her chair, her mind racing. For the first time in what felt like years, she felt a spark of possibility. Maybe she didn't need to search for all the answers right now. Maybe the journey itself, facing her fears, embracing her uncertainties, was the key to healing. Sarah had given her a different perspective, one that Jordan hadn't considered. She didn't need to fix everything at once. She just needed to take the next step, however small it might be. "I don't have all the answers, but I know you're strong enough to find your way," Sarah said, her voice gentle but firm. Jordan nodded slowly, realizing that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was hers to walk. With a deep breath, she smiled faintly. Maybe it was time to trust the process, even if it scared her. Jordan's footsteps echoed down the dimly lit street as she approached the bar where Nathan, 30, waited. She had known him for years, but their connection was always strained. He was a skeptic, always questioning others' choices, and today his cynicism had brought him to challenge her decisions. Jordan had thought that maybe, just maybe, Nathan could provide some clarity, but all she was met with was his harsh reality. "You're chasing something that doesn't exist," he'd told her earlier. Her doubts began to creep in, and now, standing before the door, Jordan wasn't sure if she was walking toward an answer, or further into the dark. Inside the bar, the low hum of conversation barely masked the underlying tension. Nathan, 30, was sitting at the corner booth, watching Jordan approach with a skeptical smirk. He leaned back in his seat, arms crossed, as if he were waiting for her to prove him wrong. "You think you can just fix everything by talking to him?" Nathan said, his voice cold and dismissive. "Your father left for a reason, and no amount of digging is going to change that. You're wasting your time." Jordan's heart clenched at his words. The seeds of doubt he planted earlier were taking root, and she could feel them growing inside her. Was she truly chasing something that didn't exist? Or was she just scared to face the truth? Jordan sat down across from Nathan, her fingers nervously playing with the edge of her jacket. The noise around them faded into the background as she tried to hold on to her composure. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the chatter. "This isn't about fixing things. It's about finding closure. I need to know why he left. I need to understand what happened." Nathan's eyes softened for a moment, but then his cynicism returned. "Closure doesn't exist, Jordan. You're just chasing a ghost." His words stung more than she anticipated, and for a moment, Jordan wondered if he was right. Could there be no resolution to the pain? Was it all just a fruitless pursuit? But a part of her refused to let go. She wasn't ready to accept defeat. Jordan stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the wooden floor. The bars seemed to close in around her, the voices growing louder as her emotions surged. "You don't get it, Nathan," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and frustration. "This is about me, about who I am, and why I can't keep living with this hole in my heart. I need to face him. I need to know the truth, even if it destroys me." Nathan watched her, his expression unreadable. "You can't always get the truth, Jordan. Sometimes it's better to let things go," he replied, his voice softer now, though still filled with doubt. But Jordan wasn't ready to hear it. She felt a surge of defiance and determination rise within her. She was going to do this, whether Nathan understood or not. Jordan stormed out of the bar, the cool night air hitting her like a shock. She felt the sting of Nathan's words lingering, but she couldn't let them define her. His skepticism was loud in her ears, but the desire to understand her father's departure burned brighter. She pulled out her phone, her fingers shaking as she dialed her father's number once again. It rang and rang, but he didn't pick up. She felt her heart sink, but this time, it didn't matter. She was going to find him, even if it meant going alone. The uncertainty of what lay ahead didn't scare her. It motivated her. She would find the answers. She had to. Jordan walked into her childhood home, the familiar scent of old wood and faded fabric filling the air. It had been years since she'd stepped foot here. Her heart raced, unsure if she was prepared for what she might find. As she made her way to the living room, she noticed the framed photos on the walls, images of happier times, now tinged with sadness. The letter from her father had ignited a fire inside her. It spoke of a truth he had never shared, and she was determined to uncover it. The weight of the unknown pressed down on her, but she couldn't turn back. The one question she had been asking for years now had an answer she was willing to seek, no matter the cost. Inside, Jordan's gaze fell on the familiar old armchair where her father used to sit. The house seemed to breathe with the memories of what it had been. As she moved deeper into the living room, her eyes caught a small dusty box on the shelf. It wasn't there by accident, she knew that. It had always been tucked away, hidden behind other belongings. Her father had made sure it was kept out of sight, and now, it called to her. With trembling hands, she reached for it. As she opened the box, an assortment of old documents and photographs spilled out, but one photo caught her eye. It was a picture of her father, with a woman who was not her mother. The confusion deepened. What was this secret he had been hiding all these years? Jordan's heart pounded as she studied the photograph. The woman's face was unfamiliar, but the connection to her father was undeniable. She sifted through the rest of the contents of the box, finding more photos, each one a piece of a puzzle she couldn't yet solve. It was then that she found a letter, one that looked remarkably similar to the one her father had written to her. The handwriting matched. Her hands shook as she carefully unfolded the letter, the paper brittle with age. As she read, the words hit her like a physical blow. Her father had left not because he wanted to, but because of a lie that had torn his world apart, a lie about Jordan's true parentage. Jordan sat in stunned silence, the letter in her lap. Her mind raced, struggling to process the truth she had just uncovered. She had always wondered why her father had left, why there was always a wall between them. But this revelation shattered everything she thought she knew about her own identity. She wasn't just abandoned, she was the result of a betrayal, a truth her father had hidden to protect her, perhaps out of guilt. The anger, confusion, and heartbreak coursed through her. Why had he never told her? Why had he kept this secret for so long? She stood up, her legs shaky as she moved toward the front door. There was no going back now. She had to find him, confront him. There was no other choice. Jordan stepped into the cold night, the letter still pressed against her chest. The weight of it felt heavier with each passing second. She had always believed her father's departure was because of her, but now she realized it was because of something much bigger, a lie he had carried for years. The cool breeze cut through her, but she barely noticed. All she could think about was the need to find him, to demand the truth. The phone call she had been avoiding now seemed like a distant memory. She needed to confront him face to face. With a deep breath, she pulled out her phone again and dialed his number. The ringing seemed endless, but finally he picked up. Jordan arrived at the doorstep, her heart pounding with each step. The years of waiting, the pain of abandonment, and the truths she had uncovered all led to this moment. She rang the doorbell, her hand trembling. The sound echoed in the empty silence, but there was no going back now. Her father, the man who had been both a ghost and a shadow in her life, was behind that door. The weight of the revelation about her parentage felt like a burden she couldn't shed. Yet, in this moment, she was ready to face him. The silence stretched. Then the door creaked open, revealing her father's face, older, worn, but unmistakable. "Jordan," he said, his voice shaky. "I wasn't sure you'd ever come." Her father stepped back, allowing Jordan to enter. She hesitated but crossed the threshold, the years of emotional distance between them growing thinner with each step. The living room was, as she remembered, except older, more worn. Her father sat in the same chair where she had last seen him, years ago. The memories flooded back, the warmth, the smiles, the sudden coldness of his departure. "Why didn't you tell me?" Jordan's voice cracked, the words forced out like a jagged rock being dislodged. "Why did you leave me without answers?" Her father's face twisted with pain. "I never wanted to leave you. I thought I was protecting you." The truth, now so raw and clear, left them both breathless. Her father's words hung in the air, heavy and full of regret. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he said, his voice weak. "I loved you, and I thought keeping you away from the truth would keep you safe. But I was wrong." Jordan stared at him, her mind racing. The betrayal she had felt for so many years was now mixed with a strange pity for the man who had tried to protect her in his own way. But the damage was done. "You should have trusted me," she whispered. The room fell silent, both of them lost in the weight of what had been said. It was too late to take it all back. The truth, for better or worse, was now out in the open. Jordan stood up, her movements sharp with emotion. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and sorrow. "But I need to understand why. I need to know everything." Her father stood too, his old body hesitant. "I will tell you everything," he said quietly. "But you need to know, I never wanted to hurt you." Jordan's eyes searched his, as if looking for something, anything, to give her peace. She wanted to believe him, but the years of unanswered questions had built walls too high to climb. "Start at the beginning," she said, her voice steadying. "Tell me everything." Her father took a deep breath, his hands shaking as he reached for the old photo album on the shelf. "It started long before you were born," he said softly. "I made mistakes, but not because I didn't love you. I was trying to protect you from a truth that would have destroyed us both." Jordan looked at him, the disbelief still lingering. "What truth?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He opened the album, revealing a photograph of the woman she had seen in the other pictures, the one she had never known. "She was your mother," he said, his voice breaking. "And the truth about her. It's why I left." The weight of his words crashed over her, leaving her speechless. After hearing the truth from her father, Jordan sat quietly, the weight of his confession pressing heavily on her chest. The past she had lived with, the anger, the confusion, all seemed to melt away in the face of this raw, vulnerable moment. The old wounds were still there, but somehow, the healing had already begun. Her father's apology, though long overdue, was genuine. He spoke with tears in his eyes, saying, "I never meant to hurt you, Jordan. I thought I was protecting you from the truth. But I see now that I've only made things worse." Jordan remained silent for a long time, her thoughts a swirling storm. The realization came slowly, but it was clear. He wasn't the villain in her story. He was just a man, flawed and broken, trying to protect her in his own way. And with that understanding came a profound sense of peace. Jordan stood up, her legs feeling unsteady, but there was no longer a sense of urgency, no need to escape. The answers she had sought for so long had been delivered, and while they hadn't solved everything, they had provided a foundation for something new. "It's going to take time," she said quietly, her voice softer now. "But I'm willing to try, to rebuild, to understand." Her father nodded, his face weary but filled with a faint hope. They didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in years there was a chance for healing, for reconciliation, for a new beginning. They both knew the road would be difficult, but it was one they were ready to walk together, however long it took. As they sat together, Jordan's father began to recount stories of her mother, the woman who had been part of the secret, the one who had been erased from their lives. He spoke of their love, their hopes for the future, and the tragic circumstances that had torn them apart. The story was painful but necessary. "I was afraid," her father admitted. "Afraid of losing you, afraid of what the truth would do to us both. I thought by leaving, I was sparing you from the pain I carried." Jordan listened intently, her heart both breaking and expanding as she heard these long-hidden truths. The pieces of her life were finally falling into place, and with each new revelation, she understood her father more deeply. The conversation slowly shifted to quieter topics, memories of happier times, of moments they had shared before everything had fallen apart. They spoke of Jordan's childhood, of her mother's laugh, of family dinners, of simpler days. There was an undeniable warmth in the air as they shared these memories, and for the first time in years, the pain didn't dominate the conversation. It was replaced with an understanding that both of them had suffered, but both of them could heal. Jordan realized that while the past could never be changed, the future was still hers to shape. "We don't have to fix everything," she said with a small smile. "But maybe we can start anew." As the evening wore on, Jordan found herself standing at the door again, ready to leave, but this time, the door felt different. Her father stood beside her, his hand on the doorframe, both of them quiet for a moment. "I don't know what comes next," Jordan said, her voice full of uncertainty, but also with a quiet strength. "But we're both here, and that's enough for now." Her father nodded, his face full of gratitude. "We'll take it one step at a time," he said. And with that, Jordan stepped out into the night, the cool air greeting her like an old friend. There was still much to be done, but for the first time in years, she felt a sense of peace, knowing that, despite everything, healing had begun. Jordan stood in front of the full-length mirror, her reflection staring back at her, older, wiser, but still herself. The scars of the past were visible, but so was the new strength she had forged from them. She had walked through the storm, faced her deepest fears, and come out the other side. The healing wasn't perfect, nor was it instant, but she could finally see a future where peace was possible. The journey had taught her that life wasn't about having all the answers. It was about learning to embrace the uncertainty, to trust that every step forward, no matter how small, brought her closer to the person she was meant to be. She exhaled deeply, a soft smile forming on her lips as she finally let go of the past. It was time to move forward, with or without the answers. As Jordan walked out of her apartment, she felt the weight of her journey lift, replaced by a quiet anticipation. The streets were still bustling with life, but for the first time in years she didn't feel lost in the crowd. The world seemed vast, full of possibility, but also at peace. She had no grand plans, no rush to figure everything out all at once. There was a certain calm in simply existing, in allowing life to unfold as it would. The day felt new, the air fresh. She was ready to embrace whatever came next, not because she had everything figured out, but because she knew how to trust herself again. Jordan sat on a park bench, watching the world go by. Children played nearby, their laughter filling the air, and couples walked hand in hand, lost in their own conversations. She smiled, realizing how much she had taken for granted before. Life was unpredictable, filled with both pain and beauty. The trick she now knew was not to avoid the difficult moments, but to embrace them with grace and patience. Past no longer held the same power over her. She could look back, but not with anger, only with understanding. The weight had been lifted, and in its place was the freedom to simply live. That evening, Jordan found herself standing at the edge of a quiet lake, the water reflecting the soft colors of the setting sun. She had always been drawn to water, its calm, its depth, and its ever-changing nature. Life, she realized, was much like the lake, sometimes still, sometimes turbulent, but always moving forward. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the cool evening air. She didn't have all the answers, and perhaps she never would. But she had something more important now: peace. She was ready to face the world, to live fully, without the need for control. The journey wasn't over, but she was no longer afraid of what it would bring. As Jordan turned to walk away from the lake, her heart felt light, the burdens of the past finally left behind. She walked forward, not with the weight of expectations or regrets, but with the promise of new beginnings. The future was uncertain, but it was hers to create. She wasn't afraid of what lay ahead. For the first time in a long while, Jordan felt truly free. She had embraced the journey, the imperfections, and the lessons that came with it. And now, she was ready to begin again, on her own terms, with her heart open to whatever came next.